Welcome to Essential Ingredients, powered by Next Gen Purpose. EI serves up thoughtful conversations with industry leaders and pioneers who support a regenerative future for our food system. The stories shared by our guests are meant to spark curiosity and inspire informed global change. Welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman, and today we have Ryland Engelhart, co-founder of Gracias, Madre, and Cafe Gratitude, and Kiss the Ground. Did I get them all in there?
You got it, yeah.
Did I miss anything?
In order, I guess it was Cafe Gratitude was the first one, then Gracias Madre, and then most recently Kiss the Ground is the nonprofit organization that I founded and now run as the executive director.
Okay.
And then that organization inspired and co-created a film called Kiss the Ground, which came out on Netflix.
So for those folks that are not familiar, because they're not from California, I'd love for you to just tell them.
There's people not in California?
I know. Actually, I think the world revolves around New York, because I'm from New York. And California, I'm still getting to figure out, but it is bigger. It's so big.
It is.
It is.
I've been here 20 years, but I'm actually on my way out. But
really?
I'd love to talk. Yeah, I'd love to.
Well, you'll have to tell us about that too.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I want for our listeners and the viewers that are watching to just, if you could just tell them a little bit about what Cafe Gratitude is, what Gracias Madres is, so that they can just know a little bit about who you are, because I think that really, once they know that, they'll better understand who you are.
Yeah, thank you.
And what the inspiration is behind where you're going next.
Cool, thank you. So Cafe Gratitude is a plant-based organic restaurant that opened back in 2004 in San Francisco, and it was a real a creation from my father and stepmother, and I joined in about the first year that they were opening. But it was really an experiment in merging this idea of food and gratitude. What a novel idea. I mean, it's kind of the oldest ceremony is sitting around a table and eating food, and oftentimes what would people do is they would give thanks. And kind of my parents are sort of hippies, back to the landers, very sort of experimental spiritual seekers, and they always had this aspiration to bridge the commercial world, business, with sort of the spiritual values of love, compassion, kindness, gratitude, transformation. And as a family, we were always seeking to create transformational experiences. And so I grew up in a household where we'd meet once a week and sit around in a circle and ask the question, like, we'd say, I love and honor myself, and I'm grateful to share myself with you. And everyone would say, we love and honor you, and we're happy to listen to you with love. And then we'd sort of check in with what was going on in our lives. And it was a very sort of exploratory of how we can be connected to our feelings, our emotions, and their direction in life was always seeking teachings, books, things that would expand their consciousness and expand their ability to understand the meaning of life and what it is to be connected to a higher power. And it wasn't connected to one religion or one Godhead. It was just that life is this intelligence of this intelligence matrix of life that has this beautiful design, and that there's this, it's all connected, and that how can we be in this web of life acting in a way that can be in service to the rest of the web.
So beautiful. I mean, honestly, that is so beautiful. And then to create a business and a life that you encompass that all and to share it with the world.
Yeah, so I think most people, again, I think where, sort of mission-driven businesses or, values-based businesses, I think most people come from the business and then let's add a little mission, add a little, values, add a little, culture. We really came at it from how do we create transformation and a model of business that is the primary product is the experience of transformation and gratitude. And so thus the creation of Cafe Gratitude, which again, it was created from a transformational board game that people would play, similar to Monopoly or Life, and you would go around and you'd land on a square and you'd ask a question like.
So you actually had a board game that you played with your family that you guys created every week, and.
Well, the board game was created at the same time that my folks were exploring by eating just raw food. We'd always been pretty health conscious and into plant-based food, and as I shared earlier, we're here on Sohart Farm. Me and my sister live here together, and we grew up on a farm in upstate New York, where you're from, Ithaca, where you went to college.
From
Not
New
from,
York.
but
I'm
yeah.
from New York City, but yeah.
And so we definitely have roots in understanding a more agrarian and a life more connected to nature. But fast forwarding to Cafe Gratitude, we were again mostly vegetarians. We were into macrobiotics, and for those that don't know, it's like eating very seasonally and eating a sea vegetable and a whole grain and legumes, and it's mostly plant-based, and it's a very sort of healthy healthy diet that some people have found a lot of success with, or sort of a framework of cooking. And so we went even further than this. Originally it was a raw food restaurant. So we didn't even have a stove, we didn't even have a hood, a restaurant with literally only raw fruits and vegetables. And this was back in 2004. And so the business model was we were a raw food restaurant / transformational gaming parlor.
Did you have the game there too?
Game was on every table.
The game was on every table. Okay, so
and literally there was no two tops. You had to sit in community.
Oh, so it was community. It was a community
we
table.
were, and it was definitely. We were definitely like, we drank the Kool-Aid, and we were definitely like, if you're coming in here, you're going to be drinking the Kool-Aid too. And that, we were actually quite threatening to a lot of people because we would ask you questions of the day. Every time there would be like, what do you love about your life? What moves you from your head to your heart? We even ask questions like, what do you want to do before you die? Where are you experiencing fear in your life? How could you have a breakthrough today? So we ask these very sort of prompting, sometimes confronting questions, but that was part of this whole gratitude experience where it was an authentic, people would come in and we weren't just curating your bowl of quinoa and sprouts and tahini, we were also curating a conversation of, so our question of the day, and we invite our guests to participate in this question of the day. Feel like, well, we're having a conversation. Awesome. You don't have to interrupt it now, but just whenever you want. Here's the seed of the question, and the question is, what are you passionate about? And again, it was confronting, but ultimately it led to meaningful and dynamics where people, it's like, we all know that when we prompt, at Thanksgiving dinner, if we just get to eating and we actually don't allow, everybody to go around and share what one thing they're grateful for, there's something lost. So that there's an opportunity of, curating a conversation that leads people slightly into the discomfort of that feels not normal, that a business is going to be drawing me into a more meaningful conversation. But that was the experiment. That's what we were doing. And it was, Bay Area, we were a vegan restaurant. We were kind of a little bit hippy dippy, and everyone, many people with colored hair and dreadlocks, and, it was a wild, iteration. The first 7 years of Cafe Gratitude was definitely kind of this very exploratory, experimental. It was kind of like the 60s of Cafe Gratitude. And then 10 years...
I was going to say, that was my next question. How did you go from being that hippy-dippy restaurant
to like...
to that, in that imposing way where you're like, okay, you're coming in for my experience. You're going to answer my questions. You're going to have this, this experience here, to now, it's a completely different restaurant.
Totally.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's different.
Totally.
So how'd you get from there to where you are now, and what did that look like? And as an entrepreneur, how did you make that decision?
Yeah, so the business, we had a 7-year chapter here in the Bay Area, and then we met two partners who lived in Los Angeles, Chris and Lisa Bonbright, who were very savvy in real estate, business acumen, finance, raising money, and so and also design. And so we were kind of the food and culture people, and they were really the sort of business and design and real estate, and sort of that merger, that marrying of those two different worlds, it really kind of had a second coming. When we moved to Los Angeles almost 11 years ago, we opened the first Cafe Gratitude in Larchmont in Hollywood, and it went from like Bay Area kind of niche hippy dippy to like oh my God, it's like become this total phenomenon, packed to the gills. People can't get in. It's like we're like coming to the Bay Area, and there's like all these celebrities around. It's like, oh my God, it became this like total phenomenon, hotspot in Los Angeles. And within that was kind of 2000, that was March 4th 2011. And then over the next 7 years we opened 7 restaurants in Southern California, from Newport Beach to San Diego. And I think the growing anything oftentimes will require compromise and shifting of ideals and values. And so that was definitely the struggle for me, because I'd say that I actually had a role in the company. I was general manager and even sous chef at times in the restaurant, because food has been definitely one of my sort of creative places that I love to create and explore. But my role ended up being the mission fulfillment officer. So I was essentially
appropriate.
It was the appropriate, the evangelist for the business, and for the culture of gratitude. And so as we grew, and I think part of the challenge was multiple locations, 7 locations, 300 plus employees, just the ability to be, we always said, we're only going to grow as fast as we have the appropriate leadership to do that. And I would say that was an area where we did compromise, and only see that in hindsight. You think, oh, like we can grow this, we have the right leadership, but it's kind of driven by this aspiration of more and grow, which ultimately is kind of the dream of business, is always scaling, growing, selling, and I think the idea of small is beautiful, and that things don't have to scale to 100 times before they have impact, because sometimes the most profound stories and experiences carry and transmit beauty. So anyways, 7 years we opened, 7 or 10 years now we've opened 7 restaurants. We've closed one of the restaurants here in Beverly Hills. But actually this whole journey of Cafe Gratitude and sort of the transformational culture led me to actually, just to stop on Gracias, Madre.
I was about to ask you, before we move to Kiss the Ground, I want to just take a minute and just say, how did we get from Cafe Gratitude to Gracias Madre?
Beautiful story. So we opened our restaurants in San Francisco. It was mostly friends and family who were employed there. On day 2, a woman named Imelda walks in. She says, "You guys need a dishwasher." We were like, yeah, I think we do. We didn't hire a dishwasher. We just thought we'd take turns to do dishes. Imelda introduced us to Pedro. Pedro and Imelda were from a small town called Tortuga. Within 6 months, 8 out of the 10 families in Tortuga, all their kids were working in our restaurants. They became our family, community, friends. We got invited to Mexico, tour the small community called Tortuga in the Hidalgo state of Mexico. We went there for a wedding of one of our employees who went back to get married, and sort of fell in love with this culture. I mean, we'd always been in love with Mexican food and culture and their hospitality, and even the Guadalupe image of the sort of Divine Mother. And on that trip, we kind of had this awakening of like, and this is because we always loved Mexican food, but we always wanted something where there was like organic, healthy version of Mexican food with no lard in the beans or no GMO corn tortillas. And so we had this vision of like, we're always hoping that someone would do the perfect Mexican restaurant in our vision. And then on that trip, we had the thought, Gracias Madre, it's a beautiful way to acknowledge that culture and that they are the backbone of our organization, and this is their family lineage of food, and wanting to give that voice and reflection. And so some of the first original recipes of Gracias Madre were from mothers of our staff from Cafe Gratitude.
That's so nice.
But it was inspired on a trip to Mexico, visiting our employees who were getting married, and invited us to their hometown to go visit them.
Did you integrate, I know you made some changes in Cafe Gratitude from the time that it was you and your family to when you had co-founders or partners. So when you then opened Gracias Madre on your own, did you integrate some of those original core values back into it?
So yeah. So I mean, ultimately, life is one big conversation,
Right.
and and it's continuing to life continues
Evolves.
to iterate
Right.
and evolve, and so the Cafe Gratitude or Gracias Madre that there is today is very distinct from what it once was, and it still all comes from a family lineage of moments, experiences, values, and commitments and decisions that were made within the overall lineage of the company. And so it's at one time we were we would take managers and all go drink ayahuasca to kind of like understand like the meaning of life and what it means to love and serve Mother Earth. And that was like, all right, we want everyone to have that experience so that our guests can have that experience. That was a radical thing to do. But you get 6 restaurants, and you can't, to grow something like that becomes very, we did something called a holotropic breath work we did for 250 people, everyone dressed up in white, and we had facilitators. And as the company has grown, and as I've stepped away to now do Kiss the Ground, and my brother steps in, or mainly running it, and you take on new partners. Obviously there's compromises and shifts, and at moments one could judge like, oh, it wasn't what it used to be, but it's
Things change, things move.
Yeah,
you have to go with it.
yeah, and it's like everything is a communication that is cascading into the influence and the unfolding of other things. Like, so what we did, it was a flower that blossomed and gave itself, and it's continued to, I mean, the amount of impact and marriages that have happened from first dates at Cafe Gratitude and the question of the day leading to a meaningful conversation, to so many brands that have kind of gone on to do plant-based things, and the whole idea of like having a message of gratitude as part of a brand ethos that's like being communicated. Back 2004, that was very niche and not there, and now it's like very common. There's you can't have I was hearing your team talk about it today. It's like you can't have a company that doesn't have something that they're saying that they're doing beyond just making money. And people
Right,
are like,
yeah.
I don't want to be involved in something that's just about making money. It's
Yeah.
like, so there's definitely been shifts from I know the one farmer who's growing corn for all of our tortilla chips, and that farmer is growing, doing regenerative agricultural practices, and I only want that, and and then company grows, and I mean, there's just the complications of being rigid about our commitments, and that one of the lessons is really, how do you be committed but not attached, and committed to an outcome and an intention, but not being attached on how you get there. And so,
I think that's a big one.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's really like that's a silver bullet. Like,
Yeah.
understanding that.
Yeah.
Understanding that you're doing this and you're committed, but you can't be attached to all the outcomes.
Mm-hmm. And exactly the way that you get there. I have a mantra that says, commit to what you want, surrender and be grateful for whatever is given. Commit to what you want, surrender, and be grateful for whatever is given. Because in that way, it's like it has you be empowered to take action, but also not disenchanted when life doesn't go your way. You actually have the courage to get back up on the horse and make another request and try to shape it in the way that you want to will something forward. So.
But before we wrap up, I do want to talk about Kiss the Ground.
Totally, yeah,
So
totally.
I want to talk about that, and I want to hear what got you to do that? Because I know that's really where your heart is, and your nonprofit, and what you're working on next.
Yeah, I went from a really cushy job running restaurants in an office to essentially saying, all right, sort of a sleepless night and a conversation with a good friend of mine, led me and watching actually a little YouTube video of Greta Thunberg and kind of her courage around being a stand for climate action, and just really reckoning with the fact that I had a very profound moment where I saw that human life on planet Earth could be healthy in 5 or 7 generations forward, because we understood our role in nature and our role in relationship to the earth, and that we could actually be a keystone species that brings health to the planet versus harm. And that sort of the mythology and history kind of shows that human interaction and civilization ultimately is in conflict with nature. And so that's a pretty big mythology and sort of paradigm. And I had a very profound moment of really getting, oh my God, the way that photosynthesis works, the way that the carbon cycle works, the way that soils connect with plants, microorganisms, trees, animals, humans, and that we could actually have a food system that goes from arguably the most destructive system on the planet to the one that is the great redeemer. And that, as a restaurateur, became very compelling. Like, I'd always loved narratives around food, and sure, healthy food, healthier for you, less chemicals, organic, but not really getting the bigger sort of organism, the Gaia effect of Mother Earth, and that literally the planet has gone through massive transformation, whether it's volcanoes erupting or meteors hitting it and being totally covered with gaseous smoke and greenhouse gases, and ultimately suffocating life on planet Earth. And how that came back to balance is photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the mechanism that pulls carbon out of the atmosphere and can put that carbon in the soil. And right now we have twice as much carbon in our soils as we do in the atmosphere, and there's a lot more room. And so as eaters, and as farmers, and as chefs, and as advocates and activists, the most hopeful horizon of hope is that we can actually be the generation that understands our role in nature, and that we can actually be the regeneration generation, and that our food system is the mechanism to do that. And so Kiss the Ground's role is an advocacy and education, communications nonprofit, really to be the messengers and storytellers and connectors around the profound leaders and practitioners that have discovered this and are seeing the values of it and seeing that it's profitable, that it actually transforms landscapes much faster than we thought when we were following the best guidance, and that it really is this hopeful way forward for humanity and nature to coexist in a really productive way, versus spending billions of dollars to go to Mars to re-inhabit a totally vacant of life planet, and create bunkers for the continuation, because we can't figure out how to work in harmony with nature.
And if there was a farmer listening, oh, if there was a farmer listening to this, or a business, or an end consumer that wanted to understand better how they could participate in this, could you give them a couple examples?
I got lots of things.
Good.
So most people don't know where their food comes from. So find a farmer in your local ecosystem, in your farmer's market, and start to ask how they take care of their soil, and find what farmer is really passionate about regenerating your soil, and have that farmer be the farmer that you shop from. Have that farmer be your new hero, your new celebrity, the person that you uplift, and you're actually, because truly farmers, not only do they sustain us, but they actually have the solution to our climate crisis. And so we need to up-level our appreciation, affinity, and advocacy for farmers that are doing that. So, know your farmer and find out who's taking care of soil and buy food from them. Kiss the ground. We have a map called the Regenerative Farm Map on our website, so you can find a regenerative farm near you.
And just for those that are not familiar, what does it mean when you say regenerative farm?
Regenerative farm means a farming system that creates a regenerative effect on the ecosystem while producing a crop. So year after year, we have more health in the soil, we have more biodiversity, more plant life on the farm, we have more economic viability on the farm. So basically, the ecosystem is getting healthier year after year while producing a crop that goes and keeps the economics of the farm running.
Thank you. I just like to make sure that whoever's watching
Of course.
I want to make sure that everyone's at the same level. We're all speaking, we all have the same vocabulary. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Know your farmer. If you're inspired by becoming an advocate, we have an amazing course called the Soil Advocacy Training. We train people all over the world to be advocates for soil health and regenerative agriculture, kind of like Al Gore's Climate Reality Project.
Mm-hmm.
We created one for the regenerative movement. So become a soil advocate, and then obviously grow something. If people becoming more connected to growing food, you obviously become more connected to life and become a better steward of the earth in a small way. And then compost. Compost is kind of like yucky. I don't want to deal with my food waste, but the reality is compost is one of the greatest sources of methane and one of the greatest contributors to climate change. And we could take that waste stream out of our landfills and put it back into the earth and actually have a regenerative effect versus a degenerative effect on the climate. So composting, and then at a very simple level, go see the Kiss the Ground film. Hopefully have your mind blown by oh my God, there's a whole new possibility of life and a horizon of hope. And get engaged, Kiss the Ground. We've got 4 programs where we support farmers, advocates, we create media content,
Awesome.
and we work on changing federal policy.
Awesome. And what's new and what's next for you?
We're launching a campaign called Regenerate America, which is a federal advocacy campaign that is designed to reform aspects of the 2023 Farm Bill. And so we're building a massive coalition, a massive grassroots activation, and we're working over the next 18 months to create farm tours for legislators, to have them really understand the importance of soil, and creating a series of content that will be broadly shared to the American general public and have the American voter really understand what is the Farm Bill, why it matters, and how it actually is a juggernaut that if it could change, and some of the resources that are there, $480 billion that are spent of taxpayers' money, could actually be shifted to new practices and new incentives that would lead to a whole different food system.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on Essential Ingredients.
Yeah,
It was so great to meet you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
To learn more about these episodes and access show notes, go to nextgenpurpose.com and choose podcast. If you like this episode, head to Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform to subscribe and leave us a review. Visit the Next Gen Purpose YouTube channel to subscribe to our EI videocast and give this episode a like while you're there. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Next Gen Purpose, and connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Justine_Reichman. Thanks for joining us.